Welcome everyone to the Scale Lab, brought to you by TechLeap. I'm Joe Wilson, and I'm here with my co-pilot, or if I'm savory, he's sweet, Constantin Mararanya. Constantin.
Thank you, Joe. And with us is Joelle Frijters. And but let's just jump right in. You started a business, Improve Digital, and we were already discussing this a bit and say, maybe our audience wants to understand a bit better what Improve Digital is all about. What did you do?
Well, I started Improve Digital when I was already 34 years old. And before that, I was working in digital advertising at Microsoft Digital Advertising. And I was actually rolling out a project in Europe to monetize unsold advertising inventory. You can imagine more and more people went online, more and more people went mobile. So we got an abundance of advertising positions online that needed to be filled with ads. And the industry used to do that manually by booking an ad next week, Friday, for so many views on a certain page. And we thought it was impossible to fill all the advertising space like this. So I started a project at Microsoft, monetizing the unsold inventory, which was the biggest secret of the industry. Back in the days, it was around 80% of all the ads was unsold.
80%?
Yeah, and that used to go to purchasing parties, intermediaries that then monetized it to buyers, advertisers at the back end, but it didn't monetize well. So we started to create a sort of an optimization system to put more ads automatically on the placements. And that's when I did that for Microsoft, I thought we can also do this for other publishers, media owners. And that's when we started together with Janneke and Lise, Improve Digital. And what we were building was an advertising auction place where ads were being auctioned. Well, every single millisecond one was generated. So we auctioned at the end around 10 billion ads a month, which means 10 billion auctions a month.
Transactions.
So, but no auctions. It was actually a whole auction and we've been running.
Yeah, okay. But that's what Google does too, right? Yeah. So what made you differentiate you from Google at the time?
Yeah, they came later to the space now. No, Google back in the days just bought the core advertising system that was dominating the market, and they were developing something similar. It's actually an alternative for the Google Ad Exchange that we offer to the market. So being the guardian, you could choose, am I going to give my unsold inventory to Google and they will monetize it for me? Or am I going to build my own advertising exchange and connect my own advertisers to it and connect to the ecosystem and run the auction myself? And that's what our proposition was, enabling media owners in Europe to build their own advertising exchange with our tech white label platform. Yeah.
So the differentiations would be they had more control, they got to set it up, decide the rules, and even choose when and when not to sell. So their control level, I guess, went much higher.
Control level and revenue level, because in the end, the whole Google system is a black box system. So if you have an unsold ad space, you give it to them, they will bid something to you, or they promise you a euro or 10 euro or a fixed amount. But you will never know if that was the real revenue. Sometimes the revenue could have been tenfold, but you never see that because it's a black box. You also lose the direct relationship with your advertisers. So this was it was an opportunity that was, well needed in the market. It was not always embraced enough because Google, in the end, I think, became quite big. I don't know what percent. They have like a whole market.
Looks like they grew. They did all right. Yeah.
But Improve Digital is still up and running and is now more together with other systems in playing in the field.
Nice. And when at the time, so you see that there's a market because you basically did your validation when you were still at Microsoft, right? So,
no, I left Microsoft to do this first for Sanoma Media.
Okay.
And I launched there the Ilse Media Exchange. And then Janneke and me met, and she just left the Q&A, and we just had a lunch and said, well, what can we do together? And I said, well, maybe we can start doing this for other media owners in Europe. And that's how we started. But the market also evolved, because when we started, there was a market where we were looking at ad networks, which were just the intermediates, and advertisers. But it changed. So we first started to optimize a couple of times a day. Then it evolved into real-time auctioning. But yeah, you need to move with the whole market, because if you have an auctioning platform, you also need automatic bidders. So it's somehow evolved towards a very complex system, where in the end, if you go to the website of the BBC, a request goes to our system. That request goes to multiple bidding systems, and all these bidding systems bid something for this unique position, and then the highest bid wins. And that's very simplified. Of course, there's a lot of restrictions. So that's the mechanism that nowadays also fills all the ads on mobile, web, video.
It sounds a lot like financial trading systems.
It's very similar to that high frequency trading. Yeah, it's a very similar system. So it happens all in real time, in a couple of milliseconds. I think in finance it goes a bit faster, but
now
it's super fast. Yeah.
You must have been profitable from the start, right? As you grew with the market, or how did you kickstart your your startup, and then when did you really accelerate?
Yeah, I think we bootstrapped ourselves to the 80 million turnover, all the way to
Really?
Towards 80 million
Really?
turnover. We first put in some of our own money. Then we did a couple of consultancy jobs. Our first job was at the BBC. It was a huge amount for 6 weeks' work. So we put it just in the wallet
like
and spend it on
like service revenue.
Yeah, that
right?
was the
They paid
services,
you for
because
your
we needed to
expertise.
gather a little bit of starting money. And also we as founders wanted to stay equal. And then we had a very sympathetic angel investor that gave us 250,000. And that helped us to build the first system. And we used then, we coupled a couple of technologies, the ones that were already there, and then build our own part, and then evolved from there.
Yeah, but now you're in
We were not
investing.
profitable,
So
no.
if you look back, was this a wise strategy? Bootstrapping till 80 million revenues?
No, not at all.
Not at all.
No, but it was also the different days. We forgot about it. This was the first round. We got it from Endite, which was actually that went quite well.
This was which date was this? Maybe.
Yeah, it was at I think that was 2011 that we got that. But the second round was very difficult, because that was in the middle of the Greek crisis, and we wanted to raise a large round, and that was more difficult because we wanted to raise 8 million. And that was, back in the days, not so common in the Netherlands. And even VC said, well, the maximum exit we see for companies in the Netherlands is this and this number. So there's actually a cap on how much we can do here in the Netherlands. I think the biggest exit back then was Booking.com. That was one of the largest examples.
It's fascinating to think about.
Spill
the
Games did a great round.
exits.
It was actually not so easy. And the first round, we also got it through a connection that introduced us there. But when we did our first round, I think we already had like 17 million revenues or something.
So there wasn't a lot of risk.
It's not a lot of risk, and you didn't get more than that. Than 8
It was
million.
very difficult. It
you
also
were
didn't help that
bootstrapped.
one of us all the time was pregnant when we were raising. That somehow also didn't help, I think.
Do you feel that you being two women was an issue in raising money?
I don't know. It has benefits, but a lot of decisions in the VC industry are also being made on gut feeling. Do I feel this guy can scale it to $1 billion? That is a sentence you hear a lot, and I'm not sure that if you're half pregnant, if that's necessarily presenting the standard image of people that are going to work 80 hours a week to push things through the roof, which we did. But I'm very glad that we did get the first round. That was a 2.5 million round that Endite did. And also, then we scaled a lot more. And I think for the second round, it was very difficult to raise the amount that we needed. Because this is a big playing field. We had competitors only in the US in the beginning. They started around the same month. And they raised like double, triple, 4 times the amounts that we did. And you can only outsmart your competitor with so much. At some point, you can't. You're always with the handbrakes on.
Yeah. But did you try to raise abroad?
Or? We went to the UK a lot, but it was in the middle of the Greek crisis. So there were even a couple of VCs that said, at the moment we're holding back on Europe, because there was this situation where maybe Greek was going to fall out of Europe, and it was not a good moment. In the end, we did found a VC, but we also found a strategic partner that really wanted to do this and put the money in that we needed. And then we decided to sell a majority stake, 85% of the company, and then took that money. And then the years after, we grew like 180% year on year on the numbers again. Mm-hmm. So that was, we were really executing our dream, and that was the whole goal. And it was also good for us. So, but yeah, I think a lot has improved and has been done already now. The ecosystem is so much stronger. There's so many more VCs that were not there 8 years ago. So I think it's much better today.
So many great questions come out of that short story. Just like I'll put them in two categories, and we'll pick which one we want to go first. I'd love to understand the product development side, not necessarily all the details, but like how you guys attack that. The other piece is sort of, there was a decision in there about, because you've mentioned the 85% sales. So I'm sure you've talked about this plenty of times, but there's a big decision to say we'll go that way rather than just take the round. Yeah. Since we're on capital, maybe we take that one first. So why 85% sale rather than just taking the investment and sticking it out on your own?
We knew we needed at least 8 million. So with 4 million,
it's the growth plan you had.
We couldn't compete with 4 million only.
Okay.
At some point, you get mobile, you get web, you get video. You have to integrate with all the bidders in the world. You have to keep those integrations up and running. So you have a whole integration team. You need to develop the different type of ads on the different types of systems. So there's a huge development requirement there. We had at the end, when I left, at least 100 developers working for us. And this is something you can't do half. You have to have all the features in. And then you have to do it for multiple markets, because the investment alone in a platform is so much, you can't earn that back on the Benelux. Mm. You have to scale at least Germany and then 4 other markets in Europe. And that's also very expensive. It is
at the same time
often overlooked. So we needed the right amount of money, and we could take it from the strategic partner and still be owner for part of it. And that was the best opportunity. If you take too little money, then you go behind on your competitors. And in this case, that wasn't possible.
But maybe I can pick that apart just a little more, because you can imagine there's entrepreneurs who listen to the podcast. We like to imagine that. And essentially, they have this question in their mind. Well, you sold control. 85% is control.
Yeah.
And they have this fear. There's so much fear about control. It's natural, I think, to a certain degree. So how did you guys address, this must have all gone through your minds as well.
Yeah. Well, I don't think I think we walked out of the office and I said, Janneke, do you have the feeling we sold the company? He said, no. I said, me neither. Like for us, it was a transaction in the backhand. We just kept going the next day as nothing has happened. And we didn't lose control. We had so many minority protection rights in that they couldn't move a millimeter without us. So that was
counted.
Well negotiated. Yeah, that was like they couldn't put money in, they couldn't take money out, they couldn't replace people. So the devil is in the details with these kind of deals. And I think we negotiated in a way that we were absolutely still in charge of the company. What does change is when you have a strategic on board, it can slow things down. At some point, you need more. Yeah, and with a strategic already on board, it can be more complicated to do a Series C.
Yeah,
that's already. And then the company that acquired us, as something happened, got acquired completely by Swisscom. So then we ended up in a large corporate structure. Being Swisscom, that was very difficult to manage the extra round there. But meanwhile, we just kept growing the company, and that went well. So it is just the moment that you sell majority of your shares. Yeah, maybe it's better for financial reasons to do it later in the journey, but you also have to live with the reality of the day.
That's a lot. 85% for 8 million. What was your? What did you?
Oh no, the 8 million was went in the company.
Okay.
So it's not for the company.
No, right.
No. The 8 million was the additional. I don't know what we in the end exactly got. But that was to execute the growth plan. So that is
that was your operating capital, and then you had other money that basically was the purchase of the ownership. Yeah.
It's now difficult to imagine. I am now also a little bit more active in the VC industry. It's difficult to imagine that with 17 million revenues or 45 million turnover, you can't raise.
You'd be a unicorn.
Be the first one.
Anyone's making revenues at all.
And then even on those numbers, we grew like 180% with the handbrakes on, because still we put a lot of money in the development. It was difficult to put enough people on the ground in Germany or in the UK. But yeah, I think that's being solved a bit better today. And that's also why we see more unicorns coming out of the Netherlands. You need money. And if you have to bootstrap for too long, you just lose time. And also maybe we're probably not the best persons for all the things. So the best, it is, when you don't have enough money, you start to hire hands, people that can help you. But you need to hire also people that can move the needle from A to B independently, senior management team.
So this is a very important point you just said. I think we're going to repeat it because I think it's so important. You just described, you may start out hiring people who can help you. And in that version, you're claiming yourself to be the talent, and the talent just needs a little extra help. Yet you have to change that model and stop hiring people to help you and hire people that can take it further than you would. Is that the right summary?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And they come at a price, and not necessarily they want to earn the most at your company. They really want to make a difference somewhere, or to realize their potential and their knowledge into something greater. And so it's not necessarily that you need to give them the biggest salary, but you need to give them at least some salary. And when you are bootstrapping, that is difficult. So that's why you need in time enough money to put in a senior team, and then you can accelerate much faster. And that's what we did, because these rounds came quickly after each other. It's not like that 10 years went by. And then we were able to build a senior leadership team, and then we started to scale even much faster. This 180% went after that.
Can you unpick that hiring strategy? Do you remember specific hires that made a real difference, and how did that change your role in the company?
Yeah, in the beginning you have a couple of key hires that are at the start of the company. And then it's a typical story. Things change a little bit when you go over 50 employees. And then you start to hire people that bring experience from outside. Of course, a CTO was for us very important, because Noor, Janneke and we are software engineers. So we highly depended on that third person. But yeah, along the lines, there were always top talents. And then you think, if we could only replicate her 10 times, we would already be there. But that's the most difficult part to me, hiring the right people. Also, you need to have a little bit of the budget. You give away also some of the shares, of course. But when you have money, you can attract better people.
What changed in your management style or your leadership style when you were hiring these people that were maybe more experienced than you, or brought things that you could not have produced yourself?
The great thing is, from that point on, you can start to delegate end responsibilities. Complete end responsibilities to people in your agile leadership team. So when we got a chief COO, very structured person, that's super complimentary to me. It's an understatement. But when you have these senior people on board, people can all start to and they bring on people that they know. So this is really the fundament of your organization. And yeah, for myself, I came already from Microsoft. I used to work a couple of years in Microsoft at the EMEA level. So I was used to the structure of a little bit larger companies. And Janneke already had a company herself. So for us, it was not a problem. I never have problems with hiring people better than myself. I think that's actually a blessing if you can do it.
Have you seen that? I mean, you're now investing in companies, or are you seeing a lot of in the Netherlands? Founders are actually hiring people better than them, or are you seeing more people hiring more like them, or more comfortable hiring strategies?
Yeah, it depends on the founders. Not everybody is hesitating to hire better people. I think it's painful when it comes to the CEO. So sometimes you see a company, you think, wow, this can be a unicorn, but you are just too nice for it, or too modest, or... and and then they would benefit from like maybe taking on a president or become president and taking a CEO on, because also investors, they really like a certain kind of entrepreneur that knows what he or she wants and that also can express that. And if you are sometimes coming from tech, a little bit too humble, it doesn't resonate well when you're raising a round. The VCs like bullish people, but with the right data behind it. And that's very difficult for founders to say, okay, well, we are maybe not the right person to be at the front of this company. That's very difficult.
Were you bullish people with the right data behind it? You and Janneke?
No. I think it's always a thin line between being judged arrogant and being bullish. I think we were bullish, yeah. I think we were bullish, and we had from the first day the plan to make it a worldwide company, and we actually started outside of the Netherlands almost. Like
your first customer was UK or something.
Yeah, we
right?
went first to the UK in New York because advertising, that's the centrum of advertising. We go there, and I came from Microsoft, so there was already a network, and we started. I think in the first year we were the New York Times. We were everywhere pitching this new story around building your own ad exchange, and we went to Germany. But we also went to a little bit too many markets at the same time without the money to follow up, because they were very interested. But they also asked, okay, when is your first local team on the ground here?
So you generated the buzz without the ability to deliver?
Yeah, that's difficult. We also generated the customers, but you need to really build then from the first ground customer. You need to build further in the UK. So we put 4 people on the ground there, and we built further. But then you need to build even further. So from 4, you need to go to a team of 8. And that requires actually really scaling money. So you can plant the seeds, you can do your first plans, you can do your first successes, but you need money to especially scale outside of the Netherlands. And in our case, we needed a local presence. And that's a bit more expensive than if you are in the back end of systems, you can maybe scale from the Netherlands, because these guys that are deciding which software to use, and they are software engineers themselves, they can find it online. But we really still needed to visit media owners. Yeah.
Is that, I mean, if you look at now, we're COVID, we have all this, would it be different? Would you now be able to scale your company from the Netherlands without a local presence? Or is it still really necessary to have that kind of interpersonal contact?
I think it depends on the company.
But in your own Improved Digital?
I think that would have been a bit easier. Now you don't have these requirements like, can you come over and do a demo for the whole team? You keep on traveling, you lose a lot of time. So I think things, what I also see now, are moving faster. The dynamics is even faster because we don't need to visit it. The call is done and the next day can be another one. And I think when we were a little bit more face-to-face focused as a business society, we needed to do traveling and come over again. And I think we're speeding up in tech.
I'm curious if that's a reset that COVID gave us, or if it was going to happen anyway. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
That is faster, like, maybe.
Yeah, maybe we'll all hybrid it out or something. Yeah. I want to just pick the product piece, because you said, neither of you are software engineers, and yet you're building something that's incredibly technical. If anyone understands, like, you're working in the world of milliseconds or microseconds, and you're looking at whoever can auction that ad the fastest actually will get the revenue that comes from it. So your competition is like like you said, it's like the hyper fast trading that went on. How did you go about building something like that if you didn't come, most of what you see, these classic startup stories, somebody's super technical, somebody's business, and then, they kind of handle the two big parts to get it going. In this case, you must have, how did you start the technical side to go make that real?
Yeah, Janneke and me, we're not software engineers, but we were always on the technical side of advertising. So for me, I was always drawn to the data-driven part of advertising. I was never interested in advertising or marketing. Even in the university, I found it 4 or 5 Ps not so interesting. But then I started my career in KLM, and there was a lot of data-based marketing. There was a book, The One-to-One Marketeer, a very old book. But it was already a dream about how you could have a one-on-one communication driven by data and technology. And then from there, if you have the vision on how it should work, the software wasn't there yet. So you just need to find the right people that can work with you to build it. I think the CTO was very pivotal. We hired him from Amazon.
Was that super early, like one of the first hires you made, or
no?
Because somebody had to code.
We
your
first built a platform,
right?
that we had to throw away. So
how did you build that then? Who was leading the building?
That we did with, I think we did that with a development company. I think it was in Egypt.
So you had a company and you outsourced it to make it, and then
and it didn't work. So we had to start all over again.
Because I think that is an interesting part of the equation, right? You can look at the success of the company, yet it's a technical product. And so the investment, you must have had it for a long time, more developers than anyone else in the company. But
there were different components. So first it was at network optimization. So we used the technology from the US and brought it to Europe. We had an exclusive reseller agreement for that. And we were adding our tech to that to create the whole stack that was needed by publishers. And so in the beginning, you have to juggle a little bit with what is already there. But the concept was already rolled out. And actually, in the beginning days at Microsoft, it was done in the optimization was done in an Excel sheet, 4 times a day somewhere in Seattle for the whole world. So it was a macro. So
love those
actually,
macros.
that company was sold for a little bit more than anything we have ever seen. But before that, nobody optimized advertising positions. So it was. It is a co-working between the developer and the person that really knows the industry and the back end of the industry inside out. And Yannick and me have both more than 10 years in advertising on our track record in exactly the right corner for this. So when I started at Microsoft, nobody wanted to do performance advertising. And also at the publishers, they didn't want to do that. They said that is the down end of the market. We are more premium.
20%, not the 80%.
Yeah,
no, it's getting sold.
It generated a little bit higher prices than I think the exchanges do nowadays. But we were very early in that topic, and then you exactly know what it needs to do, and it evolved over time because that real-time bidding part, where everything happens in a couple of milliseconds, it came later. It wasn't there yet, and it came with bidders that started to evolve bidding systems, and then we built also an RTB part in our platform. Yeah.
So it was an add-on later on to.
Yeah.
So you were somewhat of a.
You have the optimization.
Engine. So basically, greatest spend, greatest sell, and then you moved into the ability to. I guess the industry was heading this way, and you had to stay on front. Real-time bidding.
We were. I think we were quite at the front of that because there was only 3 players in the world doing that in the early days. And in the US started 3 companies with the same topic at network optimization, and they all involved into real-time bidding together with us. So,
was this the vision, or did you just take it as it came? I mean, did you develop as market was demand was created?
No, it was always our vision to help media owners optimize their revenues from advertising in an automated fashion, data-driven.
But auctioning was that was the model. Was that something that just came on your path, or was this always an idea that this was one of the scenarios of going forward?
It was always an idea because at first you have an auction once a day.
Yeah.
But then you start to auction.
Which just seems
5 times
crazy
a day.
now. When you say that to me, it just seems crazy to think, all the advertising happening in the world once a day. We're going to pull up the Excel sheet.
That's what happens,
macros, which are basically algorithms somebody programmed in his macros, and we're going to just let it play out.
Yeah, but that was already quite new there because it was still done manually very often without any optimization. So it could happen that one deal was booked for €1 and there was no place for the €10 deal because the other was already booked. So there was no yield management. So it was always it's a bit deep into the mechanisms of advertising now, but it was always the idea to optimize, and it doesn't matter where the interest for that advertising space come from. You want to get the best out of it for your end user. It still needs to be in line with all kind of guidelines and restrictions, and for the media publishers. And the idea was really to keep them independent from one big ad exchange called Google. And at some point we were also bigger than Google in the Netherlands, and I think it was in Sweden the case, so that was quite nice. But they have so much more money. That is difficult to be larger than them on the long term.
In the market, did having a Google exist help you with how you made your sales pitch? In a sense, you were selling against their approach, and so you took a natural opposite approach, and transparency was your pitch, I think.
Yeah, I think that did help because in the beginning you are sort of shouting in the desert because you go to RTL in Germany and they say, well, we don't need this. Because they've never seen it. And who are we, two Dutch girls, to tell them how to do their strategy, like change from manual sales with fancy salespersons towards an automatic system. But once that also Google started to push their ad exchange, you start to sing the same song in terms of direction for the market. And then you're one of the alternatives. So that does help. You need to have more parties to turn over. This is really a shift in the whole industry so that you don't do that alone with a 2.5 million investment. You need more parties for that.
Yeah. You touched on going international. You basically said you started in London, New York, because that's where the market was. And then you said actually that Germany, and you maybe overextended a bit. Can you tell us, maybe with hindsight, how you would have approached it otherwise?
Yeah, good question. As a founder, you often tend to be quite opportunistic. You see opportunities, and being a founder, you want to take them. So what we did is you start to roll out your company by opportunity. And that's actually not the best way to do it. Not totally.
But it's not a bad way.
It's not a bad way.
At least there's traction, right?
But you also need to think what to not do. And that's in the first stage of building your company, the most difficult thing. You need money. Every revenue is there. You think you're in a land grab game, which is also true. Like the market is there for the next couple of years. But you need to really think. On hindsight, I would say, let's take one market and go in big. Take that market and then the next one. Because if you go everywhere a little bit, like we were like in year 2 or in 5 markets, then you're everywhere a little bit light. And that's the challenge is then that if you have 4 people in the UK, the competitor comes in, put 10 people there. We have a good PR agencies talking about an office with X desks, which sounds super big, even there were no people at the desk, but that was the PR. The exact PR line was, we're opening an office with X desks. And I'm like, X desks, there's only 2 people there, but a really good strategy from the competition. And you need to be able to follow through in the market and then build it out. So if I would do it again, I would say, okay, one market, do that well, and then the next one. Yeah.
And Amsterdam, you were always in Amsterdam, right? Yeah. Was that a good base to expand from? Or would you have preferred to move to the US earlier, or to go to start in another place? Also from the capital perspective. Maybe.
I think I saw a couple of companies doing very well by moving at least the image of the company first to the UK and then to the US. Criteo did that, for example, a French company. I think Amsterdam has a lot of benefits in terms of talent, the language skills, the position. You're not jeopardizing any of the bigger European countries. So if you're a French player and you want to go big in Germany, that's already more difficult, I think, than a Dutch player. A Dutch player is welcome everywhere. So I think it was good. From an investor perspective, obviously in the US, it's very expensive to scale in Europe. Like great example, if you want to sponsor the annual industry event, I think it's around 50,000 to have a keynote in each European market. And if you spend the $20,000 in the US, you reach the whole industry at one go. So it's very expensive to, maybe you're well known in the Netherlands and well known in Germany, and then you go to France, you have to start all over again. And that's time consuming. But
in the US, there's always more of you, meaning there's other companies just like you more often, I think, than there are in Europe. Do you see it that way or no?
Yeah, but the US competition came quite fast to Europe. Landing in the UK because they like brother and sister almost, a little brother. And so they were also here. I think that could have worked, but also that's a whole investment on its own. Moving to the US, you can't go there with just one person. I think you need to ship your best person there and do it. But we chose for Europe, which was enough for us. It's for a lot of companies difficult, I think, to move to the US. Maybe also funding. If you're there in the field with everybody having 5 times more funding, maybe difficult to win.
You talk a lot about. I maybe shift a little bit to you, and that you use the word founder a lot, right? And yet you were founder. You were an executive, you were the CEO, you played a few roles along the way, and actually more than one time, I think. So what's the shift from entrepreneur to CEO for you? What was that like? Because obviously there must be growth in lots of decisions, but maybe you can encapsulate that.
Yeah, I don't know if it's from founder to CEO, but after a certain size, it really changes. You spend so much more time on internal communications. If you're in your first group of people, they all feel like entrepreneurs. And they all want to work day and night. And they all have the vision super clear. And then at some point, there's a tipping point. You get your first interview and they say, can I work 4 times 9? I'm like, huh? We never heard that one. Eh? But people start to feel employee in your place. So you spend so much more time on building company culture and making sure that things keep on going forward, because the bigger you get, the more difficult it is to keep speed up and running. And as a CEO, you're much more focusing on getting your leadership team in one vision and in one direction. And if that's happening, they will do a lot of the other things that need to be done. And then your main role is more company culture and being there to the outside world. So that changes. Indeed, and as the early day entrepreneur, you're also fixing the printer and and the dishwasher needs to be emptied. That's all in the early days. And it was a funny story because at some point we had interns and we said, okay, now Jannik and me, the dishwasher, the interns do the dishwasher. And then we got an intern strike. Yeah, that's
because of the dishwasher.
That's
not the dishwasher.
That's just introduction into employees. Your intern starts striking.
Yeah, so I'd like to see the job description. Interns. So
number 1. And they said, well, it's not on our job description. They said, yeah, but so isn't this and this and this and this. But yeah.
And how did you manage the strike?
My co-founder managed that. No, one person actually left.
Yeah.
But I think that's also about setting expectations. But people, I think, if you have the right people, can hire the right people. That is the most difficult part.
How do you avoid this employee kind of entitlement, or do you just manage it? I can imagine that at a certain point you have to give in. You're no longer a startup of 10 people, and you have hundreds of people, and then that just kicks in, this employee entitlement.
There's also, so you cannot be intrapreneur. Eh? So I think you keep things small so people feel accountable and they have the feeling that they are their own entrepreneur on their part. So I think that's important. And keeping teams small. Agility is a buzzword, but it really works.
So do you mean as the company gets larger, allowing it to have its little islands?
Yeah,
so
that
they have this ownership within the island.
Yeah, I think that's very important. And then company culture, that we do it in so many ways. You also are brand towards new employees. So you try to build a company where people can really use their skills and to make something beautiful, and that attracts people. And also a nice working place, because they became a family and they started to call themselves Improvies, printing their own T-shirts. And we didn't manage that; they did it on their own. And I think that's really a great compliment. And then they don't care about working hours, or they go for the mission together. And that family feeling is very beautiful if you see it happening. So that went well. And even the people that were there on the early days. Maybe on the early day, a person is responsible for sales, but when it grows bigger, you need a different type of profile. Then there's always an area in the company where you still need that early day entrepreneurship skills. So you put those persons more in the innovation corner of the company, or you have to manage.
So you actively kind of repurposed people from the early days. It was not a kind of you go up or out.
No.
Strategy.
No, you take you have a look at where the skill set is, where their ambition is. And work them towards an area where they add value. And there's always new areas that need to be explored. And then you put the early day team there.
Yeah.
Well, not everybody. Some of them evolve also into the next stage.
We've had different CEOs on this show. And there's a different view on management, of course. control. How do you look at that as in terms of balance? Like, as I listen to you talk, I think about how you said, I didn't have a problem hiring people more talented than me. I mean, you seem very, confident with yourself. But, all companies need control. Is it important to like have a very strict control, or is freedom the reason you were able to succeed? If you compare those two, how do you look at control?
Yeah, the best way is if you have a lot of insight. And also if people themselves are coming into the office and have their own dashboard of what's happening. It's all about, we had a lot of real-time dashboards about everything that happened in the company. And then people start to be also proud about the things they're doing great, and they show it off.
So your love of data didn't change in your leadership style. It stayed right there. So data was a part of your leadership
absolutely.
style.
Everywhere was data, and that follows the teams. And they are also proud of it. And if it's not working, of course, we also had a lot of mishires, like totally misfit with the company. But if you have the people and they fit, of course you have control. But top down doesn't really work.
I'm a fan of dashboards. I'm a fan of the transparency of any company being available everywhere. Like if there's 10 things that matter more than everything else, let's just see those all the time.
It's also motivational, because if you see it going up, we see it with sports. If you have a Strava, you go to run more. It is just how people work. And I think it also works for in your business environment. If you do things and you don't see the results, like with us, it's totally intangible. We can't look back and say, wow, this is now a nice bike. No, you see nothing. You see a dashboard and you see numbers. So you really have to bring it towards something tangible. And also make people shine. And if something great happens, we had a champagne moment that everybody could ring the bell and then just take a drink or something. That it was at a while a whole bucket of champagne, but so a koelkast, a champagne koelkast. Yeah. But that does work, and you build this culture of people that want to thrive and show what they can do, and that did work very well. And I think also because we were 2 female founders, that's not really conventional, we also attracted a lot of unconventional profiles. And I think that's a usually underused pool of people that don't necessarily feel at home in a very conventional white male environment, which is often the case in scale-up. So I think we had a very big benefit, and we never focused on that. But
so you were a magnet for it.
Well, did you? I mean, at a certain point, I assume you hired an HR manager, and when he or she came in, did they acknowledge this and say, well, "Wow, you've created a very open culture," or there's this specific culture that you've created that and tried to codify that instead of values, or how did that work?
The values is always so. I think the first HR person we hired was just for hiring people, But I think we got somebody that was really managing company culture at some point. And then that's when you're a little bit bigger and you try to continue the entrepreneurial values in the company with all kind of things. But everybody that joined us, I think, saw like, hey, this is quite diverse and I feel at home. And the difference is...
you didn't try to make it explicit in some ways.
No, it's quite obvious if you have 2 female founders in the tech company, it's already quite uncommon. And it's like, okay, it's 2 women here. Do I want to work for women? That is maybe sometimes also not so easy. And maybe some of the talent that we couldn't attract, like not all the guys feel like working for 2 female founders. But when you have a larger leadership team, you have...
it mixes up.
Yeah, you have, that's not the case anymore. But
do you think so last question on this, and then maybe we can jump into the rapid fire questions. Do you think any of that diversity was lost as you grew? Meaning you lost it somewhat as you grew because you began to mix up the leadership team and things looked a little more traditional as the company got larger?
Yeah, there's always Janneke and me, which is then 2 females. But we did have a moment that we say, God, now everybody starts to be now from the same profile. And I don't know how that happened. But it was still Janneke and me there. There was enough diversity, I think. And we did a reunion lately.
Diversity to spare in the beginning, so you kind of played as you went.
Diversity bonus.
Yeah.
Now for us, it was never a topic. So, but I can imagine that because we were an unconventional founder team, it attracts also people that feel naturally at home at a different setting. But it's an opportunity because there's so many different people out there that don't look like the standard profile you're looking for, and then that's a great opportunity to get good people on board. But we never thought about it on upfront. But when I thought back of it later, yeah, maybe that's the case. Yeah.
And maybe a last question on that, which is linked also to your internationalization. Did you always have a kind of an English-speaking culture as you went to the UK and the US first, hiring a lot of foreign talent as well? Or was it a predominantly Dutch company that then expanded and grew more international?
It was always English from the start. I think one of our first hires was an American, then a Dutch girl. English was always the starting language. And that was... But I also came from an international working environment where English was the standard. So I think that's sometimes difficult for founders now in the Netherlands. If you have no international experience, you think less international. And also, where do you start? If you don't know anybody in your business industry in other markets, who do you call? And I had the benefit of working already a couple of years in Microsoft. So if we want to go to the US, you look at your LinkedIn, you say, oh, he's there. Let's call him if you know somebody at the New York Times. And then you start to create openings. And that's sometimes difficult if you have founders that have never been working internationally. And then then you think Germany is already a huge international step. Or maybe even you go to Belgium, but still Belgium in the Netherlands is so small. Scaling internationally is a challenge if you've never done it and never been there.
Got it. All right, a few questions that we ask quickly, and you just answer. You've listened to a few of the podcasts, so you've heard these probably before.
Oh, yeah.
So no long answers on these. If you could travel back in time to sort of like day one of Improved Digital and give advice to your younger self, what would you say?
I think focus earlier and raise more money earlier, but that's easy said. But the bootstrapping, it took a little bit too long. But we tried. It was difficult. And then maybe not going to too many markets at the same time.
Which is the focus thing again, right?
Yeah. Focus in products and focus in regional areas.
Are there can you think of one or two decisions that you deeply believed in along the way? You're like, but it turned out to be wrong.
Yeah, like this is a land grab game and we can't afford to wait another year to go to France. Or the same, I think that was the same. You think, now we get an invitation from a French newspaper, and saying no to that, it's very difficult for an ambitious entrepreneur. Yeah.
That's that opportunity comment that you're making. The opportunity is really
you follow the opportunities.
As opposed to following a plan or something, like go take that country. If you could pick anyone in the world, living or dead, to get advice from, who would it be and why?
As an entrepreneur, I think I don't have a famous person that I would like to ask advice, but I think me as an entrepreneur and other entrepreneurs could really benefit from having a couple of experienced entrepreneurs under the phone button, that you can call for advice. Because very often the most relevant advice is not so far away from you. Like Obama could give me advice, but I'm so far away from him on what I'm doing that a little bit nearby, but a couple of steps further from yourself is the greatest advice. And we miss that a little bit. Like, who can you call to...
18 months ahead of you or 2 years ahead of you max.
Or who did it before.
Yeah.
So in our case, we would love to be able to easily call the founders of a booking.com, or maybe people that are now scaling would love to call the founders of Adyen, but they are often busy. But it's so valuable to have 1 hour with such an experienced founder that is a couple of steps further. We miss that a little bit, and I think that can really help the ecosystem if you have access to those advisors a bit more.
Okay. So who do you go to most for advice now?
Oh, yay. Yeah, that depends on what part in life. But I think inspiration I do find in other leaders and in podcasts and things. But I have not a specific person I go to for advice.
No one person. Okay. Is there anything you can't go a day without doing? Something you need to do every single day?
Think about new things, making plans. I have every day a plan almost for something that I could build or create, or I'm always creating something. since I'm born. So that's
So every
deeply
day
rooted in me.
You're dreaming.
Now I'm also executing, but
Yeah, just to make sure I don't.
I'm mostly
position you
breaking.
correctly.
I'm mostly breaking. Say not now, but yeah, I'm always creating things. I see something and I think that could go there, or yeah, that is something I've done since I'm a small child. Yeah.
Are you still dreaming of building another kind of big company?
Yes, but I'm also realistic about what's possible. And I always compare it to, if you have a company that can scale big, it's sort of like you've won your place for the Olympics, but then you need to start training to win. And to win the Olympics, you have to give up everything. And Yannick and me did that. We gave up everything. You haven't seen us at the barbecue for years and years. We were always till 10 o'clock in the office. But now, at the moment, I don't have the bandwidth to do that. I can do top sport, but I can't do the world competition in time. And that has to do with family and the commitments my husband made for jobs. So now I decided after I left Improve Digital to go a little bit broader in tech. So entrepreneurial residence at Yes Delft. And now I took on the board role in High Tech Excel. And I really like to add value to the ecosystem there and see how we can scale on a bigger scheme, the whole industry. Like, how can we help it grow further? And there I can make more impact now than I can do with my own company. And I also like to be in a little bit broader topics than just one industry at the moment. So for now, that's what I'm very excited about.
But you like hardware then? Yes, Delft and High Tech Excel, you're more in engineering.
I love hardware, but it's difficult to make a large scalable company from it. But I also, what I really like is that there's very beautiful innovations in these ecosystems. And what I really hate is that we can't make it big.
Yeah.
And that's such a pity. And we don't want to be the incubator of the world.
Well, we also often ask, is there anything you think that the Dutch market should do differently in order to make it easier to scale? You were sort of, as a company, as we're talking about Improved Digital, born international. So you started with that. But is there anything that you think as a market we should do differently to make it easier to scale from the Netherlands?
I think a lot of improvements have already been made. A lot. And also in terms of culture and... I think we can still do better on including more people from more backgrounds into this ecosystem. It's still not elitaire. That I wouldn't say that. It's not an elite thing, but it is still a game of the kansrijke, people with great studies and So if we could pull in, because we need all the talent in the market to make the Netherlands and Europe big. If we can pull in all the talent and make it accessible for people from completely different backgrounds with no network to get into this entrepreneurial ecosystem, that would be great. I think that's not done yet. When you see entrepreneurs, the ambition level needs to go up, and there can be a couple of reasons why it's not always there. Like, let's scale all of Europe and the US. Sometimes it is because they don't think it's possible. And they say, but maybe they don't. With our revenue, we can't raise so much to go into the UK. And I think that's something, I don't know how to solve it, but it's maybe cultural. It is a bit modest.
Well, I mean, some of the examples of other companies succeeding and growing from the Netherlands and going larger and larger. I think those examples are a great way to change the dreams. And to make the dreams bigger.
And when you are in Yes Delft or High Tech Excel, what are you communicating to those entrepreneurs? Because there you have those ideas and maybe not the big ambition or maybe not the skill set to scale. But you've been there. What is it that you tell them?
Now, when it's really deep tech, then there's not a lot I can tell them other from the practical things of scaling a company. But some intermediate tech, I try to open up the discussion around the product is not what you sell. You need to use it to solve a challenge out there. And how do you do that? And it's hugely underestimated, the value of a marketing proposition, a go-to-market sales. Very often they say, we're looking for a marketing person. And then they have a very young search engine optimization specialist, not a starter in mind. It's underestimated that it takes two to tango. You need very talented engineers and you need very talented commercial persons to make something flourish.
This is the
and deep tech, that's a whole different story that takes so many years before any product can go anywhere. But
Okay. Great. We have the same last question for everyone, which is you have an audience of entrepreneurs listening to you. Any words of advice?
Maybe then I would say, going further to that modesty. They always said to me when I was young, like, in Dutch you say, bescheidenheid siert de mens. And that's a little bit in our culture, like modesty, how you say, shines on people.
Well, it's becoming, or yeah.
Yeah, but modesty shines on people, but not on companies. And I think that's something that we as entrepreneurs need to realize, especially in the market that's international, with players that are much better at shouting out what they all can do. And I think what we have often in our startups is super great, but we are too modest in carrying the message out there.
Yeah, there is an international competition for that message, so it needs to be heard.
How it is, yeah.
You're going to have to stand up and shout it, or no one's going to listen.
And not too modest. As a person, beautiful, but as a company, it doesn't really work.
Yeah. Thanks
Great.
a lot.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to The Scale Lab, a podcast brought to you by TechLean. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, please share it on your network via social media and give us your feedback. See you on the next episode.